Since 2005, the Naturopathic Doctor News and Review, NDNR, has been a leading news source for naturopathic physicians in North America. But the roots of this respected journal arise from a personal struggle that brought naturopathic medicine into the modern era. Stick around to learn this fascinating story. Now, NDNR serves as a dynamic voice for the advancement of naturopathic medicine by informing physicians about recent developments in the practice of natural medicine. On a monthly basis, NDNR covers the science, the practice, the products, and the services that natural medicine doctors use and prescribe. But what is not generally known is why the founder of NDNR was inspired to launch the magazine in 2005 and the personal story, which is a life and death story behind the inception of the magazine. Well, today we're joined by Matthew Knapp of NDNR. He's a COO out of Scottsdale, Arizona, and he's going to share with us the story of how NDNR helped bring naturopathy into the modern age. So welcome to Nutramedica, Matthew. How is life down there in Scottsdale, Arizona?
It's wonderful and warming up.
Well, I'm very, very jealous. I've heard many good things, and I hope to visit you one day soon. Now, I know that NDNR has been publishing since 2005, and a little research told me that your publication reaches about 12,000 health professionals every month, and you're covering, natural health stories from pretty much every angle. How big is your library? I mean, it must be huge.
Definitely. So we've been publishing, like you said, since 2005, and our publication has grown to about 6,000 articles on the database on ndnr.com, covering news articles, case studies, clinical pearls, all of it.
You really cover all of it, don't you? Okay, so before we get into the story of how the founder was driven to launch the magazine, why don't you tell me, what is the mission of NDNR? What is your North Star?
So yes, really NDNR was developed to be a forum for the naturopathic profession. It's open to any and all licensed naturopathic physicians to contribute content, case studies, clinical pearls, research that they're conducting as well. And a lot of that is really bridging the anecdotal history of naturopathic medicine with the evidence-based medicine as well. So it really just serves as a dynamic platform for doctors to share, communicate, and ultimately provide better patient outcomes through this shared knowledge base.
Right. Okay. So that sounds fascinating to me. I do want to dig a little deeper into that duality of the science and the anecdotal piece. But before we do that, do tell me about the founder. Razi Berry, I believe, founded the journal. Tell me what drove her to found NDNR?
Yeah, so NDNR really started with a miscarriage. It was actually 5 miscarriages in a row. They had taken the back room of their 1950s bungalow and had prepped it to become a nursery for their new child that they had lost. Dr. David Tallman is the co-founder of NDNR, and he was married to Razi, and he was new to the profession at the time. Having been a chiropractor and going through that training before entering into naturopathic medicine, they would receive these publications at their home that really served chiropractors and would share that information. She would read through it and really saw that there was a lack of communication for naturopathic doctors the way that the chiropractic market had been able to share that information. And so, but even before the fertility issues that Razi was experiencing at the time, she was suffering from a time in her life where she experienced debilitating pain, fatigue, and for many years she had been in and out of clinics. She had visited countless doctors and specialists, always being referred to someone else. I mean, it got to a point where there were doctors that were saying, it's all in your head, we don't really know what's going on here, but we can always just give you another prescription for something else that's going to combat one of those symptoms that was really, debilitating to her at the time. And so when she came to naturopathic medicine, she kind of came to it very reluctantly. She didn't know a lot about it. She, growing up in a very allopathic family, she didn't know that there were alternatives, in healing and in the mindset that we can create there. So it was really like her last resort. So she ended up going to the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine's teaching clinic. There she was able to really explore some new options when it came to her healing. So through herbal therapies, IV drips, dietary changes, detoxification, proper supplementation, and being able to work with a physician like a naturopathic physician who would really spend the time to get to the root of her condition, she was finally able to mend. She was off all of these prescriptions, and she was really starting to feel better. So going back to the story about the infertility, so when she was sitting there in that nursery, thumbing through all of those, papers that were coming to them in the mail, she really thought that this was something that the profession needed, and she wanted to be an advocate for this medicine because she had had such great success with the treatments and the protocols that had been given to her to get her to a point that she could be functioning, vital, and back in society.
It's a fascinating story, and I think it's a story that many people have actually experienced themselves. They have a condition that perhaps is maybe not there isn't an obvious cause and effect. They spend years going to traditional medicine. They don't have something that can be easily identified, so they suffer for years until they finally find themselves coming to a naturopathic doctor and investigating that. And they actually most people see that really as kind of it's almost like a Hail Mary. Well, it can't hurt. And yet when they actually experience what it's like to sit in front of a doctor who is looking at you as a whole person, starting from your stress level, your diet, your exercise, your lifestyle, the kind of toxins you've been exposed to, and they're looking at you from that point of view, suddenly they realize this should have been my first stop, not my last stop, right?
Definitely. And so they decided that they were going to take that nursery and turn it into the foundation for this new publication. She always said that this was her first child, NDNR. Yes. And so they painted the walls green, just like that little leaf in our logo of NDNR. And she really wanted to do something that embodied the principles of the profession and reflected its spirit. When I started coming on to NDNR about 2010, that was a thing that she kept on telling me. We need to embody the profession in every single issue that we publish and put out there. And at that point, she really became the biggest cheerleader for the profession. And even to the point where she was named the champion of naturopathic medicine by the AANP back in 2017.
Wow, what a great story. I have to wonder, today, especially really recently with, the pandemic that we're all living through, there seems to be such an upsurge in interest in natural medicine and understanding the role that it can play in helping you lead a healthy, fulfilling life, not only physically, but mentally, but also supporting your immune system in ways that perhaps you haven't done before or haven't thought of before. And yet we know that the natural approach to health, it's as old as the Greeks. I mean, it goes back 3,000 years. So I'm not going to ask you to give me an idea of what it was like back then, but certainly, if we look at the 80s and the 90s, naturopathy was still sort of emerging, I think, from the resurgence of interest that perhaps happened in the 60s. And as a result, it was sort of painted a little bit with the same colors as we think of the 1960s. Could you tell me a little bit about, what was the landscape like in the 60s, in the 90s, and speak to me specifically about this idea around anecdotal evidence as being, a big part of naturopathy's, what's the word I'm looking for, development.
Perfect. So yeah, so like you were saying, in the 1960s, we start to see these schools pop up for naturopathic medicine. This is really creating a divide in terms of the people that call themselves naturopaths and then licensed naturopathic practitioners. There was a group of doctors there that really wanted to elevate the level of education, of clinical insight, and really share that in these academic areas. From that, we see the AANP come about in 1985. And so what they're trying to do is really build awareness for the medicine and really let individuals know about licensure and being able to coordinate with all of these different communities of naturopathic doctors across the country to create this uniformed vision for what the profession needed to grow into. And so when we take a look at the 90s, it's a very early time. Everyone is kind of doing their own things in their different camps. And so there isn't that unification that really needed to be there to galvanize the efforts to bring the profession to the majority of individuals within North America. So when we come into the 2000s, that's where Razzie and Dr. Tallman, started getting into it. They had gone to school, and that's when it was decided that this is a publication that needed to happen because of having all these different communities across the country. There really wasn't a way for them to communicate in an effective way. Social media wasn't a thing back then. They didn't have those capabilities. I know even early on, there were some physicians who were so old school that they didn't even have email. So when they're sending out these letters announcing this publication, they're handwritten letters going out to all of these doctors across the country, these leaders of the profession, the elders of the profession, to let them know what they were starting. And again, it was really an opportunity to bring the profession together, to give them one place every single month where, the best and the brightest in the profession had the ability to share clinical insight, to share what was working in their practice, kind of like you would having that conversation with a friend at a coffee shop, sharing, these are the things that we're doing. Here's the research that I was reviewing and I found very interesting. But how do we apply that to practice? What does that mean for the patient at the end of the day? I mean, patient compliance is a huge part of a clinician's, one of the things that they have to face each and every single day. So by sharing these insights, sharing these clinical pearls, this wisdom from the profession, it only adds to the value that the patient gets at the end of the day.
So what you're saying then is that not only are you focused on the sort of the science piece, but you're also focused on the patient anecdotal piece, which is maybe, is that where everything starts? I mean, does it start with the patient and I've been trying this and it's worked with this, or perhaps with a naturopathic doctor, try this, does it work? And then the second piece is, well, let's get some evidence. That seems to be, I'm thinking about St. John's wort as an example. That became hugely popular perhaps 10, 15, 20 years ago. And then, people were taking it en masse, oil of oregano, that kind of thing. And then the science came out, and some of the science said, yes, this is great. And other of the science said, well, maybe it's not so great. But is that how this generally works? And what role does NDNR play to bridge that gap between the wisdom, if you will, and the science?
Definitely. So all of our publications, or every single article that's published within NDNR, is medically reviewed all of the research that is referenced in each and every single one of our articles is carefully and meticulously reviewed by our managing editor, Mary James, to take a look at the efficacy of the research. Was it done in a way that really serves to answer the questions that are being posed within each and every single article of NDNR? And so what we're doing is, these are clinical stories that are being shared in the publication. And this is how, like you said, St. John's Wort interacted with my patient. They had these specific needs. And when you take a look at naturopathic medicine, it's taking a look at the whole person. Yes. Where sometimes in clinical research, you can't, because it's such a large collection and there are so many variables for right. each and every specific individual, it's hard to understand, all of those different elements that go into healing. So by publishing these case studies and these stories, we can broaden our horizons as to, and consider new and diverse modalities, supplementation, what other factors in this individual's lives should be considered, and then taking a look at the research to find the efficacy behind the treatments that are being provided.
So now I know that the publication, it's available online and it's available as a publication. What other channels and avenues do you communicate your healing mission through?
Definitely. And so we do, and like you said, ndnr.com is a wonderful resource. We see about 2 million annual visitors to that website each and every single year. We have also branched out into one of the side effects, I should say, of NDNR was bringing a lot of attention to naturopathic medicine. We would get tons and tons of patients coming there, but the information that was being provided is for practicing physicians. So sometimes it would go over their heads. But it did create awareness in the fact that, oh, yes, kind of like Razzie's story, like there are other alternatives to what they were currently experiencing in the medicine that was being provided to them. So in 2017, we decided that we would go ahead and create another arm, consumer-facing website called the Naturopath, which aims to advocate for naturopathic medicine, connect patients with physicians, as well as just give, best practices that people can go ahead and start introducing to their lives, really based on all of the tenets of naturopathic medicine. Beyond that, we have a robust social media where we constantly have new and diverse content that's being published. We've done also summits as well, where we can take a group of physicians and talk about the particular health concerns that people may have. Our first one back in 2016 was around natural cancer prevention. The other one that we did later in 2017 was around heart health, but not just the physical pumping heart. We're talking about emotional support, the emotional heart. We're talking about the spiritual aspects of healing as well. That all culminated in a documentary series that was launched last year with Razzie called the Love is Medicine Project, which we had about 300,000 individuals join us for in our initial launch. And it was really just a moving, powerful story about how emotions and, those aspects can impact our physiology as well. And it really is a beautiful, beautiful collection.
Well, I can see that you guys have been very, very busy over there. I'm getting tired just listening to that list. Do you do a podcast?
So our founder, Razzie Berry, has the Love is Medicine podcast.
Great.
And it's the first season is currently available. I think we have about 150 episodes on there. So lots of wonderful information that can be shared with consumers who are interested in health and healing.
Okay. This has been a fascinating sort of little glimpse, not only into how your organization operates. Of course, everyone in the industry knows it, but also learning how it came to be. Now, we are going to be speaking with you on a regular basis, Matthew, because what we want to do is we want to be able to bring some of the stories that you're highlighting in your upcoming issues to our viewers on a regular basis and encourage them to visit you at NDNR also. What is the next issue you have coming up? What's it all about?
It's one of my favorites. It's our mind-body issue, and that will be coming out in our June issue.
Okay, very good. Can you give us a tiny little, like, any little highlights that we can look forward to in the mind-body issue?
So we typically cover vitalism. It's one of those foundational principles of naturopathic medicine, just talking about, healing the whole body. And so there's always wonderful information in there, really getting to the roots of the profession and sharing some of that history with members of the profession as well.
Well, Matthew, I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks where we're going to go through that mind-body issue. Thank you so much for joining us today on Nutramedica and sharing the roots of NDNR and how you guys conduct yourselves down there in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's great to see you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right, Matthew. Okay, well, Nutramedica gives you front seats to the current evidence-based research and clinical guidance for your practice. To stay up to date with our newest programs, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And if you enjoyed the program, please let us know by liking the video. And as always, we look forward to your comments and feedback. We look forward to your comments, so go ahead and make a comment. We'd love to get it. On behalf of the entire Nutramedica team, thanks for watching today. We'll see you next time.